If you think the jig head minnow carried my entire 2025 season like it did everywhere else on the internet and in tournaments, it absolutely didn't. These are the baits that actually cashed tournament checks for me all season long. There are about 8 baits or so that paid for themselves 100% in 2025. And most of them aren't what you're seeing on YouTube and the pros are pushing every day. This is not a best baits hype video. These are the exact baits I trusted when money was on the line. Wait until you see what beat out everything else. I reviewed my tournaments on a previous live stream. Basically looked at my profit and loss when I took tournament entry fees versus checks cashed. And then I reviewed the baits one by one. I looked at the ones that were the primary baits in each of those tournaments, as well as some of the supporting ones. These are the baits that end up putting bass in the boat that ended up crossing the tournament scales for each event. You can go back and check the receipts. All these bass are on GoPro and my tournament video recaps on my YouTube channel. So there's nothing to hide here. It's all put out on tape. If it didn't help me get paid, it's not on the list. This year, my tournaments ranged mostly in Minnesota and Wisconsin, from deep, clean, natural lakes with vegetation, bluegills, natural lake forage, to dirtier water, river systems, the Mississippi River with shad, and all the way from late April, late October. Whether you're a tournament angler or somebody that just loves getting out and chasing bass, these baits will surely produce for you as well. These are just tournament baits. These will work for anyone on a limited time budget. The goal of this video is to show you baits that will be effective so you're not wasting time on all the hype and sizzle when you could just load your box with baits that are steak and potato. And I'll have lists down in the description below, so don't worry about taking notes, where you can check them out. So we're gonna go from bottom to the top, from the ones that were supporting casts to the ones that were the mainstays and the top of the list that caught and weighed the most bass in tournaments. So the swim bait, Zaldadris 5-inch fully loaded swim bait, only weighed a couple fish, but they were some key fish in the national championship on the Mississippi River. I actually like this bait a lot. The way they do the line through. It kind of looks like a mag draft bait, but it actually is more of a slow rolling, deep dredging style bait in my opinion. And I don't think I've lost a fish that I've hooked on this with the system where the hook pops out on this line through with a single hook in the back. Not a ton of fish, but a couple key big fish that went a long ways. And I have had success on the 6-inch version of this on some of the Minnesota lakes as well. Texas rig, a small player supporting role mainly on Lake Waconia. When I'm saying Texas rig, it was actually like a flipping punching rig, like a beaver style D-bomb creature bait, like a 3/4 to 1 ounce flipping milfoil, where I caught a couple key fish on a Dobbins Ecstasy 756, where I was able to just absolutely manhandle them, get them out of the foil, and get them in the boat. It wasn't a ton of fish, but it was several quality fish that led to one of my highest finishes of the year, of 3rd place on Lake Waconia in the TBF Championship. Another bait, it was kind of a supporting one, but it caught some quality fish. The first 2 days of the Mississippi River Tournament National Championship, I caught key fish on this custom wiggle wart painted by, it's an OG wiggle wart with a custom paint job from Horseshoe Customs in a Nebraska craw. And this is the chewed up version, so it doesn't look that pretty, but you can see that the smallmouth really liked it. And I weighed a fish every day of the national championship on this on the Mississippi River. Here's what a clean, fresh one looks like. And I'll have links down below if you want to check out AJ's work at Horseshoe Custom. And, you know, I think some of his craw patterns are some of the cleanest out there, but he does a lot of cool paint jobs and worth checking out. Not a sponsor, just a good buddy. Love his work and I have a lot of confidence in throwing those warts. Cracking into the Super 6 here. Drop shot and Ned, I kind of combined those together. Finesse. Drop shot was really some key fish in the St. Jude tournament early in the year, spawning smallmouth, using a little baby tube. It was clutch on several big smallies. I have a lot of confidence in the little baby tube on a drop shot, and that was super key. Very niche situational thing there. I did catch a few fish as well on Vermilion, which was also a spawning smallmouth tournament on drop shot, but I kind of felt that wasn't the most effective tool. Combine that with the Ned, and the Ned really was about one tournament, but it was a pile of fish. I was throwing a little Ned bait like this with a chartreuse head. This is the Arsenal Fishing Deadly Nedley with a little tungsten Ned head, and it's got a nice stout hook. So that tournament was all about efficiency, and I did have a Crush City BLT, which was kind of the elastomer plastic, which held up, but a little bit stouter hook. The chartreuse was key, so I could identify it down in the bed. When I saw the chartreuse disappear, I knew the smallmouth had it. And I think it was a little extra color to get those smallmouth to be aggressive towards these baits. But I was able to scale up to 12-pound leader on this Ned and horse those fish and boat flip a lot of them in that tournament. And that's where this little bit stronger hook, the chartreuse head, was all a good combination for boating probably 30 plus bass that day on this Ned in that Every Fish Counts tournament. So that was a key player. I'm a big fan of the chartreuse Arsenal Nedley heads, tungsten. Top 5 here, kind of comboed the Fluke and the Senko together. The Fluke was kind of a bit player on the Vermilion tournament, just working it real fast, weightless, working it really fast along the surface in the scamper rig, pulling fish up. It was good for finding fish in the Vermilion tournament as well. And then most of the time, the Senko was either on a Ned rig or a wacky rig. And anytime I was doing that, I was using the Arsenal bands to secure it on there, make those baits last longer. So, I mean, a wacky rig was just kind of a cleanup around docks on Lahamadu, caught a couple fish on Vermilion. It was just a place, you know, I was cleaning up fish. It was never a mainstay, but, you know, having the durability to keep those baits on there longer made it more efficient in tournaments, and that's always a key for me. No secret to the wacky rig is a bait that gets bit everywhere all year long. Frog, topwater, you know, whether it was the plopper in that Vermilion tournament that got a couple key fish late, or the frog in the river tournaments where I got key bites, especially in the Winona State tournament. It kind of caught several of the better than average quality fish each day on the frog, and it's just a fun way to fish it. And I got a lot of confidence in a hollow body frog. Getting into the top 3, getting into more power baits and more power fishing here as well. Whether it was Lahamadu, where we were using a full-size chatterbait over the grass lines to catch quality largemouth. Late in the year, it was the mini version of the chatterbaits with a little Crush City mooch minnow on the back that caught a ton of good fish and big largemouth on the national championship. So no surprise here. You know, the chatterbait has been a mainstay in my arsenal for a while, but new this year is kind of mixing in these mini-style chatterbaits with a little smaller when you got smaller bait profile. You know, when everybody's throwing the big chatterbait, a lot of pressure sometimes coming in with the mini max can be the deal. Number 2 was the stupid tube, and I actually just went out to the boat and I grabbed some from the graveyard because, you know, could rigged up a fresh one here, but we got a bunch of just torn up soldiers here of the stupid tube, different colors. So to me, what's key about the stupid tube is basically you're rigging the stupid tube as a combo. You know, the best part about a tube is its erratic fall. The worst part of tube is an exposed tube head that gets hung and everything. So putting your jig head inside, but Texas rigging it stupid style is a way to compromise. And the St. Jude tournament, it was a big player. The Vermilion tournament, it was a big player. All the river tournaments, it was a big player. So about half the tournaments this year, this caught a pile of fish for me. For me, it's the Horseshoe Custom tube head, the weedless tube head. Has one of the best EWG hooks that I've found. They're worth checking out. If you want to dabble with the stupid tube, that is the best head and hook I've found. As far as tubes, I both like, for mass-produced tubes that are easy to get, the X-Zone tube and the coffee tube are both really good options to me. Have the right amount of softness, thin wall for stupid tubing that I found. In the end, everybody's going to ask, you know, why is the jig head minnow not on your list, Rich? Like, how did you not catch them more on the jig head minnow? To be honest, when I was out fun fishing, this is something I worked on a lot. I spent a lot of time on it, invested in gear and heads and rods, and I caught fish on it in practice and out fun fishing at times. But in the tournament, when the chips were down, it was something I just wasn't comfortable relying on. I tried it in tournaments, but it never really manifested itself in tournaments. Top of the list is a pair of jigs, both a flipping jig and a finesse jig. So the finesse jig was a little bit more of a bit player. Here's kind of a Horseshoe Custom finesse jig. Got that on a Dobbins 744, 16-pound line. Usually has a Speed Craw or a Z-Craw Junior or something like that on that. Nice one. Go. The AJ's Horseshoe Custom finesse jig. Fishing this more offshore for both smallmouth and largemouth. A nice combination of something that gets bit and catches quality fish from anywhere from Vermilion to Lahamadu to the river to lakes. It was just always on the deck. And then by far the number one, all by itself even, was the Bass Tech 3/8 ounce jig most of the time, sometimes a ½ ounce. Got it on my Dobbins 705 to Tula SV, usually had 18 to 22 pound line on it. And, you know, here we got a little Z-Craw Junior, but we mixed it up with the Yamamoto Shinobi grub, but more often than not, it had either a menace grub or a speed craw on it most of the year. And this was fished from a foot of water to out deep and everything in between around cover. And, you know, it got a lot of work in Lahamadou, Waconia, Green Lake, a Madison chain. You know, so about half the tournaments, this was a mainstay as well. As you can see here, just, you know, looking at it in a graph format, this is kind of the, you know, the jig, the stupid tube, and the bladed jig were, you know, over 50, almost 60% the total fish weighed across the stage, and then it trickled off from there pretty fast. So when the chips are down, I find myself going to the jig as old reliables. That the number one bait reveal is the jig. If I only have one bait almost all year round, it probably would be a jig. A couple of honorable mentions here, two of the baits that didn't quite make the list. You know, jerk baits were good in practice for me early in the year, but never really manifested in the tournament. The Neko rig is something I worked on in the off season. I did catch some fish on Green Lake on it. It was pretty good in practice, but didn't come together in many tournaments, as well as Lahamadou. The minnow, again, you know, like, hey, practicing for some of the river events, practicing for Lahamadou. I was getting bites, but when the tournament, I tried a little bit, it didn't happen, and it kind of quickly went to the side. I know you guys swear by some of these baits. I'd love for you guys to leave a comment with your best bait in 2025 as well. I pinned all these baits and links to everything down below, down in the video description below. They're not just things that I'm sponsored by. It's really just the stuff that I use and I trust. What bait surprised you the most on this list? I'd love to hear it. If you're curious at all about how my successful baits in tournaments change from year to year, check out this video on the screen right here next.